doing the sugar push. Do the sugar push. Do that sugar push. Do that sugar push. Pull 'em out, put 'em in, let it go with a spin. Do the sugar push. Do that sugar push. Do that sugar push. Now you're really hip to the swing.
When they're jumping around on the floor,
The rhythm's best by far.
swinging and swinging with a triple step.
Beep, I play to the bar. Do the sugar push. Do that sugar push. Do the sugar push. Let him go, let him go, let him go, let him go, let him go.
Everybody knows it's just a crazy little move.
Push him out, pull him in. Now you're right into the groove. Do the sugar push. Do that sugar push. Do the sugar push. Let him go, let him go, let him go, let him go. Do the sugar push.
I'm telling you.
Do that sugar push. Do that sugar push. Let him go, let him go, let him go, let him go. Hey man, doing the sugar push.
It's West Coast Ramble. Tonight we've got the swinging tones of Joathan Stout and his Close Shave Quartette. With your host, Big Sandy, Pope Paul, and me, Tom A. It's West Coast Ramble.
Hey, you know what? I'm excited. I want to tell you I'm excited.
Tom, why are you excited?
Because we have a really great band in here. You know, we've had a lot of rock and roll, and lately we've been having some more rock and roll stuff on, but this time we don't have rock and roll. What do we have in here? Please, you guys enlighten me.
Some smooth, sweet jazz.
That's right. Well, not really smooth. I think it's more like swinging. Big Sandy, what do you got to say about this?
Well, I tell you what, I was just re-watching our last episode with Lydia Britton and the royal family, and I was thinking about, well, and then tonight we're going to have Joathan on, and I thought, like, it's what I dig is that we have such a variety. I think this is we are going to veer a little bit farther outside of our usual thing here tonight, and I think that's wonderful. We need to expand it on the shows. I've been telling you every day, Tom. So.
No, you're right. I'm taking your word for it. Hey, let's take a look at the band. This is,
Hey, it's the band.
Joathan Stout, and it is the Close Shave Quartette. Hey,
Can we get a close-up shot to make sure that this is true? Oh.
yeah. Hey, but before we get into them, what else has been going on, Big Sandy? I know that you're getting ready to go on the road. Talk to me.
Yeah, that's it basically. Just the big show that we've been talking about on this program, you know, at the Pacific Amphitheater, and that went well. Now we're getting ready to head out, even as things are getting strange again out there. You know, we'll see how it goes. Hoping for the best, prepared for the worst, as a wise man once said.
Yeah. And Paul, you just got back. You were on the road, weren't you?
I went over to Nashville, and if you saw the episode with the royal family, I had the opportunity to play the Bridgestone Arena with Anthony for the Charlie Daniels volunteer jam, and that was amazing. So most people I played in front of easily, and had a fun show down on Broadway with Lydia as well. And I made it back here, and getting ready to go back to teaching a bit, but I'm gearing up for Viva. And I have a few big shows coming up with Abby, Moonlight Trio, and the Moonlight and Screaming Rebel Angels. Will be doing Viva, obviously, and also playing, opening up for the Rhythm Shakers Memorial Day weekend. So look out for that show. It's a Sunday at I forget the name of the venue off the top of my head right now, but really looking forward to that show.
Yeah, you should. That's cool, man.
And for
Yeah.
the viewers at home who might not be in the know, Viva is a Viva Las Vegas, where a lot of us have gone to, hung out at, and found work at every year. This year moved from Easter weekend to September. I won't be able to be there this year. We have tour dates that were carried over from last year that we're fulfilling. But we wish them all the best and a safe weekend there.
Well, thank you, sir.
And on a personal note, I was really excited to have Joathan Stout in here because I listen to his records and I try to pick out. I just try to play along. They have such a tight groove, and he has all these cool old licks, and I'm so excited to see him. And he's in my house, so to me, I'm pretty thrilled about that. And I'm sure the Mills brothers would approve. Anyway, and if you guys notice, there's no door on my studio because I had to take the door off to get the vibes in. So I want to thank this guy for making me take the door off to get those vibes in there.
Well,
Awesome.
when is a door not a door?
We're not doing jokes yet.
Oh, yes, we are.
I guess we are. Hey, Joathan Stout, tell me, what is this group and what's going on?
So this is my smallest band. This is called the Close Shave Quartette, and we ended up putting this together a while ago for the Christmas party at the barbershop that I go to, Sweeney Todd's in Los Feliz. And when the quarantine hit, we had some stuff that we were going to do with like a much bigger band, and when things got really bad, it's like even with masks and testing and all that stuff, it was like kind of, what can we do where everybody can wear a mask and everybody can be safe? Yeah. And so I was like, oh, let's do this. We got vibes, guitar, drums, and bass, and so kind of the Close Shave Quartette, because it's an homage to that barbershop. But we did an EP, like a live EP from one of a weekend event that got canceled, and so when Tom mentioned doing this, I was like, well, if we need to fit in this little room, I think the Close Shave Quartette is the perfect way to do it. And it's probably the band that I have that features the guitar the most because there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
Usually I've got like two horns or vibes and clarinet or a full big band. So this is like guitar in your face.
Yeah, we're not offended. Please play on. Hey, you guys want to jump into a song for us and let the people know, if they haven't seen any of your playing before, what they're in store for?
Yeah, so this is an original tune from that EP. It's on Bandcamp now. We sold out of the physical copies, and I haven't gotten around to making more, but this is a tune called The Mobtown All Out, which is a dedication to a great swing dance ballroom in Baltimore, Maryland that was doing a telecast early in the pandemic for all their employees. And it's like really cool that like their business is suffering and they're bailing out the employees rather than like trying to keep the business afloat. They were really cool about that. So I wrote the song for that. So here is The Mobtown All Out. One, two, three.
man.
Thank you guys.
As my people say, fantastico. And Tom has gotten on our case about cursing here. I'll just say that was hot. Oh man, that was cooking.
Was that a real mother clucker, as they say?
Yes,
Damn right.
that is exactly what I'm trying to say. And again, that's your own composition there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I've been leading bands for like 19 years now, but it's really only in the last like 5 years that I felt like I'd done the homework of playing this music to like feel like I could write a tune that was worth anything. And I probably should have started earlier, because some of those old like riff tunes that like, you know, some jazz cats would just throw together for a session, like they weren't necessarily like the finest crafted pieces of art. They're like, you got a head on this? Oh, I got something here. Throw this, you know, because they're just doing a date and they needed to get a tune out. But yeah, that's an original.
Well, with songs like that, have you ever had an experience, a situation where maybe somebody will come up and say, "Hey, man, that was fantastic. I dig your arrangement of that song," and then you can say, "Well, actually, that's my song." Like, have you ever been in that position?
Where somebody's been surprised that it's an original?
Well, no, they just assume it's a like a standard, or you know, and say like, "I really dig your arrangement of that song." Like, well, it's my arrangement, my song.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I think somebody was one of our other tunes from our last Campus 5 record, Millhouse Stomp, kind of feels like an old tune, and so I've had people that like thought we're looking for it, and we're like, "Oh no, that's that's ours." Sorry, man.
That's cool, man.
Thank you.
And I can see how that would happen, because the way you present it is, actually, even if they had one of your, you know, maybe if they were searching online and came across the artwork for all of your different releases, it just so like it fits in with the things, the styles that the music that you're drawing from. Just all the way around, it just all works in a beautiful way.
Well, thanks, man. I mean, like, I feel like really like akin to like the stuff that you do, because you know, like there's a certain kind of appreciation that you have for every part of kind of those eras that you draw from, and it's from like actual knowledge and actual reverence for them. It's not like I wanted to start a swing band, so I bought some suspenders and some two-tone shoes and like called it a day. Like, you know, like you've heard all of those, you know, 78s and 45s that you're drawing from, and you know, so like it's with respect. And so like when I look at, you know, the way you do your art and the way you conduct yourselves, like it's that same kind of reverence and love for the genre and all the kind of, you know, different parts of it that there can be, like, you know, for what you do from Western to country and all the rockabilly and all the stuff that you draw from, like it's really cool to see that. And so like what I'm just trying to do is like do the swing version of that. You know?
Yeah. Well, it seems to me that, and you know, you have the band you're talking about with the Big Sandy and the Fly-Ride thing, the bass player behind you there, Wally Hersom, he was part of that. Him and I started the group, and that's the way we approached it. But it seems to me like the next generation and maybe with a generation after that, like it was taken even farther than that. Like you really dig deep there. But without letting it get in the way of feeling fresh and vital. So just hats off to you, man.
Oh yeah. So I think the vintage fetishizing the vintageness of it can kind of get overkill, and I think I'm probably guilty of that many times. But like, you know, what we're often served in like the swing dance community is like kind of later jazz musicians that don't necessarily love or care about anything kind of pre-1950, and so I was feeling like we weren't getting that, and so that's why, you know, I started a band to like serve that community, because like, you know, for people that maybe don't know the difference between different eras of jazz, it's like if you're like, oh yeah, we're going to do a rock and roll sock hop, you know, with some real oldies, and you're like, okay, that's cool, and then Metallica comes out, you're like, well, I guess to somebody that's an oldie, but like you're off by like 30 years. Yeah. And so like the difference between like, you know, Benny Goodman 1937 and like Miles Davis 1959 is like, I mean, that's like, it's a different genre of music, like all the
miles apart.
Oh, literally.
Nice.
So, and a lot of like jazz is like kind of that later style. So, you know, it's all about just kind of making it feel rhythmically right. You know, like old swing music is a lot like disco or house music, where it's like, it's got to have a thump to it. And like part of what they did with jazz is like take that thump out so that like it would groove a little bit like smoother, but like you need that thump to like make the dance floor pump. And like, you know, you mentioned Wally. Like when I first heard Wally play with the Bone Break Syncopators, like I was like, oh, that's what bass players are supposed to do. I was never able to really explain like what was the thing. And like I had one or two people I could call that like that knew what to do. But like if I, you know, went down on the sub list to the third person, it was like, yeah, can you play a lot of roots and fifths? And like, it's not really about what notes Wally's playing. It's that rhythm, that time feel, that thump. And like, it's the same thing with like Josh's drum. Like there's a big 26-inch kick drum back there. And it's not because, you know, it's, you know, for show, like that timbre of that drum like fits in with the gut strings on the bass. And I usually play acoustic guitar when I'm playing rhythm in like in any band besides this one. And like that thump, that beat, like that's what it's supposed to be and supposed to feel like, you know?
Well, I think it's a bit ironic because, you know, the farther someone like you pulls back from, okay, what, you know, most of us grew up knowing music from a rock and roll perspective. But sometimes you can go farther away from that and you try to reach for the real essence of earlier styles of music, and you end up being actually more rockin' than so-called rock and roll. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, it has life, it has heart, it has beat. It's like the punk rock of its day. And you know, I like what I feel when you play, man.
Oh, man, thank you. Well, and
I'll hand it over to one of the other guys, but I just wanted to throw that in there.
Oh man, thank you.
Well, yeah, we're only one song in, and you guys all sound phenomenal. All four of you guys, even though two of you are only close shaven. But
didn't get the memo, guys. I see how it is.
So we got to meet Josh and Wally. Can we meet the gentleman on the vibes as well?
Craig
That's
Fundiga.
Mr. Craig. How you doing, sir?
All right. Nice to see you. I'm
Man,
the
good to
clean
meet
shaven
you.
one.
I'm just curious, like, what got you into playing your particular instrument? What got you on the vibes?
Ladies.
I actually, believe it or not, I have a home movie of me when I was like 6 months old playing one of those little Fisher Price ones with my sister's baton, so that's where it started. It started with that, then I played drums, but I didn't realize this was related to the percussion family, so. But a lot of drummers cannot play this because it's melodic, but it is part of the same family, so yeah, that's how I got started with the Fisher Price.
That's pretty cool, dude.
That's good, man.
Yeah. Get that sponsorship.
Exactly.
We gotta get Fisher Price
You
out here to
gotta
sponsor
get a
this
Fisher
podcast.
Price sponsorship. Am I allowed to say that?
Well, one thing I wanted to talk about too is like when you hear swing bands today, like you said, it doesn't have that rhythm. It doesn't have that thump. Like you can't really hear it very well, you know. Oh, there you go. Yeah. So one of the things what I dig about your band is like you can hear all the thump. Like I know how Wally plays. I've been watching him for years, you know, and he got that rhythm right tight, you know. But that's what makes the music pop. Like when you pop those notes off of his notes, and when you get some guys who really know how to play, it's like magic. And like I'm a guitar player, and I like to play along, but there's something missing. Like it takes some kind of magic that you guys have, you know. And only a handful of guys can do it now. So like, it's really amazing what you have. I don't think people most really can put their finger on what it is.
Oh man, thank you. I can give you a doctoral dissertation on all of the stuff that like later jazz does, which is why like most people that try and play this music usually come from like a later jazz background. And I think what Robert said about, you know, coming from a rock and roll perspective, or like starting with that, like there are ways in which kind of this older jazz was more pop music than kind of the jazz we think of as like capital J jazz, you know, your Miles Davis and your Charlie Parker and stuff like that. And there's a pop music sensibility or a rock music sensibility that is sometimes missing. And for sure, like it's dance music. It's like I said, disco or house. Like it's got to have that 4 on the floor. And like, you know, part of it, like we were talking about, like I mentioned vintage fetishization, you know, like about using the perfect gear or whatever from the era. But like there's a certain thing about a big bass drum that it resonates in a certain way and has a certain decay. So it thumps and then stops like exactly the way you want it. Same thing with the gut strings on the bass. And like, you know, show up with a bebop kit with a tiny little bass drum and it's going to go pop. And like, you know, but the guy that has that kit doesn't necessarily know like, oh no, you're going to be playing every 4 beat on that. And like audibly, and, you know, we're kind of all together with that. So, you know, and and I think like a lot of the aesthetics of pre-swing or pre-bop jazz, so like the swing era and stuff, there's a pop musicness to it, and there's like there's a way in which, like, if you listen to old air checks, like some of the guys might play part of a solo that they played from the record when they were playing live. Like they might quote themselves. You know, like you go see a rock band now, like they play the solo on the record. Like that's what you do. And but like there got to be a point in kind of capital J jazz where like, oh no, improvisation at all times is the most important thing. And like I kind of like a little bit of that compositional aspect on a solo. Like, hey, man, when I listen to Charlie Christian, my hero, like when he plays the tune Six Appeal, he plays the same lick over the break every time on every alternate take on every live recording. And you better believe he was like, dude, check out this sick shit I came up with. Oh, sorry. Check out this sick stuff I came up with. You know, like he was proud and he was like super happy with this thing he composed. So I like to have some of that aspect where it's not just like, forcing improvisation at all times, because like I gotta be honest, like not everyone's 100% the most clever every minute of every day, so like maybe like save some of your best stuff and bring that out, you know.
Or maybe this would be a good point to go for another example of the non-capital J jazz that you do so well.
Yeah, well let's do so I mentioned that tune Six Appeal, and this is a tune that is very much inspired by Six Appeal, you know. And I kind of came up with this as like a solo guitar thing on acoustic guitar during the pandemic, and Trick or Treat. And I was trying to find a title. I was like, it needs to be spooky. And then I thought like, oh man, if I can make this our version of Dead Man's Party, and every year it'll get played, the royalties will come pouring in. But yeah, so this is a tune very much inspired by that tune Six Appeal with the Benny Goodman Sextet from 1940, and we recorded this on the Close Shave EP and also on our new Campus 5 record, and it's really cool because I think it's really cool. I'll let everyone else decide, but like in the Campus 5 recording, you've got trumpet, like muted trumpet, and you got saxophone. And so it's like it's different timbres, and you get the same tune, but like a different arrangement of it. So, you know, for those who want that Easter egg, it's kind of a cool thing. So, yeah, let's do Trick or Treat. One, two, three.
real band there. Look at that.
I love the
Take me back
atmosphere
in my-
that creates there.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, like,
Takes me back to those steamers.
I'm trying to rip off that Tune 6 appeal, and it seems to work. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, trick or treat. So, request it at all your local radio stations so they can go, what? I've never heard of that.
Yeah. F that dead man's party.
Yeah.
But you know what? I know you draw from earlier styles, but I'm just well, actually, you don't always want to think when you're listening to music, but I do often. You know, sometimes you just want to get lost in it. But I was thinking how that some of the stuff that you're drawing from, maybe it was carried over, maybe by some of those guys from an earlier era who ended up playing on different sessions. Like I hear, like I can hear a strain that was carried on in different like soundtrack music, and earlier we were kind of horsing around talking about TV show themes, but there is a line that carries through there. I know.
Oh, and
that's just a thought that came to mind.
And there's so many studio cats. Like George Barnes is one of my favorite guitar players, and he's an electric guitar player that goes back to 1938. Like he's one of the first recorded electric guitar players, and like he's on like all these rockabilly records and and studio stuff and pop records. And so like you could be listening to like a rockabilly record. I think he's on one of Brenda Lee records. I think that's what I'm remembering. But like you could be listening to a rockabilly record and hear somebody that's like a swing era jazz player. Like Earl Palmer was like a New Orleans swing and jazz drummer, and he played with all the rock and roll greats, and so many of those. So like and like there's a way in which a lot of those players kept going, and some of them kind of went into the jump blues R&B territory, some of them went into the studios, but like there's still like a swinginess that they have and that they carry forward. So I love that you can hear those things in those later recordings too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that lipstick on your collar? Because I think that was one of his solos.
Oh, Connie Francis there.
Yeah, well, that was Connie Francis. Who did that solo? But it was the same as a jazz guy. Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway,
did I just stop the conversation?
And also like, and the difference between like what Charlie Christian is doing and what like somebody in Bob Wills' band is doing, like music was so cross-pollinated back then because like the harmonies and the changes were all really similar between early country stuff, Western stuff, early jazz, and like especially somebody like Charlie Christian, like I said, my hero, like he grew up born in Texas and then grew up in Oklahoma City, so like you better believe he heard like those Western bands, and they were all sort of in the mix, and like all those guys, Eldon Shamblin and Junior Barnard, and those guys were all hip to Charlie Christian too. So like
sure.
I think when you take all of those different threads out to the next iteration, there's still some of that shared DNA that carries forward. So yeah, man, for sure.
Well, yeah, just that was the kind of thought going through my head in general. Listening to you guys play right now, I could hear things that came before and what came after, and that's a really nice thing.
Yeah.
Do you approach it differently, like when you're playing with the Campus 5, or with the Close Shave Quartet? Do you come like ahead of time thinking, okay, I'm in this mindset? Or is it just the same sort of thing with different instrumentation?
Well,
is there a difference in the way you approach it?
For sure. Well, the instrumentation is what does it. So like when I play like in one of my regular bands, I'm usually playing an acoustic archtop guitar most of the gig, and like if there's an electric guitar solo, I'll like put the guitar down and then pick the other one up just to play the solo on it. And so like, and there's a whole tradition of playing like acoustic chord solos that like is one of my favorite things. And so like a guy like Alan Roos, who played with Benny Goodman, is like, I try and cop his thing. And so like, that's kind of a different mindset, because now, and like that solo that I played on that last tune is sort of in that mold, but on an electric. But yeah, like I definitely think of it differently. And like this band, because of the instrumentation, and it's there's no piano, and it's kind of a little more jazzy, so to speak. So like it's kind of on that cusp of almost bebop. So like I can kind of lean into that like proto bebop vibe that it's got, and without it sort of tipping over into like, you know, jazzy jazz, you know. And I like that about this band, and it's definitely more free because I'm playing, you know, a full solo on every tune. Craig's blowing on every tune. You know, in my other bands, like if I get a solo, it's maybe 8 bars on a bridge. You know, it's like the Bob Wills thing. Like, okay, Tiny, okay, that's it. Now the next guy. Like, you know, you're not getting to like, you're not getting into a jazz odyssey. You know.
Yeah. Well, speaking of jazz odyssey and things that fed into that, other influences that led to, you know, jazz musicians like branching out, working the other way. Did you start out with? I know you were asking if there's going to be any gotcha questions or any curveballs, but I'm sure you've been asked this before. Any of your early influences that might surprise us, like any modern or like, you know, rock influences?
Oh, I mean,
you know?
I'm a Valley kid that grew up in the 80s and 90s. So like, you know, Metallica was a big influence for picking up guitar, and then like, you know, the influence of K-rock on me as a person, like I'm amazed by it because like a lot of the stuff that I listen to now that's not vintage music is like electronic-y stuff, and I blame that. You know, not blame, but like I credit that to the fact that like, you know, every day at 12 noon, like the entire 90s, Richard Blade was on there playing New Order and Depeche Mode, and like that wasn't an alien thing. And like, you know, like I went to a magnet school, and so we had kids from all over LA City bust in. So it's like, you better believe my buddy Art was like, you know, a rebel, and he had his Morrissey t-shirt on and his Harley boots. Like I had all these friends with all these different influences, so we had lots of different stuff. And like I was goth industrial for a long time.
Okay.
So but I would say like early on Hendrix was really big, and like he did a lot of this kind of chord stuff, kind of Ernie Isley kind of stuff. So like Little Wing, or when he did like a Rolling Stone at Monterey Pop, there's this like kind of like that kind of stuff, and that's still kind of, I love that, and that reminds me of what I ended up doing. But I definitely know that like I got in just before grunge hit, so like I wanted to learn Metallica stuff, and the proficiency that you needed to play a Metallica solo versus needing to learn to play a Nirvana solo, like you need to like be able to play the instrument. And so like I'm really grateful that was my immediate influence, because I know some of my friends that like maybe started 6 months, a year later, like they were sort of content with just being able to play like stuff that was a little bit less technically demanding. And so when they heard jazz later and wanted to like explore that, they're like, oh yeah, I can't hang on the instrument, whereas like I could hang on the instrument, so I could keep going. You know,
that's really cool to hear, man. That's really cool. And for you to mention those other quote, those influences or things you know, like a lot of people absorbed along the way, just by you saying that those aren't, I mean, when I heard that wasn't an alien thing, instantly that makes me think, well, he's not an alien thing now. You know, it just kind of humanizes you. It's really cool, man. Yeah. Because for a lot of people, it's like, where did this guy come from? He's so immersed in this older stuff. But it's
well, you know, I'll tell you, there is one thing though. So you know that kind of like alternative rock attitude of like, no man, I'm gonna get the real thing. I'm not gonna do that corporate BS. It's like, you know, when I got into this music, it was because I started swing dancing in like 1995, and the group of people that I was sort of watching and inspired by, it was very much this kind of like punk rock, alternative rock thing of like, no man, we're not gonna like just put up clip-on suspenders and wingtip shoes and be like, we're swing dancers now. Like, no, they like really like got immersed in it. Like, no, I'm going to do the real thing. And for whatever reason, like I've always been driven by this like mythical idea of like, no, this is the real thing. Like, no, this is the authentic thing. And, you know, like, I think we all get to a point when we're playing a vintagey kind of music where like you go, oh, I actually can't live in 1936 or 1957 or whatever. And you have to just sort of accept that and be cool with that and enjoy that. But, you know, there definitely was this kind of like attitude about it. And those dancers, it was like, oh, I'm not going to just like go to a ballroom dance studio and take like, you know, whatever generic lessons. Like I'm going to go watch old movies. And then like we found some of the original dancers that were still dancing here in Los Angeles. And so like we learned from them, and then they had clips of themselves that we had never seen. And like, it was mind blowing. So you feel like you're a part of a tradition. And so for me, like, reflecting on it now, like there's a great thing David Chang did on Netflix called Ugly Delicious, and it's all about food. And one of the things they talk about is like chasing authenticity, like in a cuisine, is sort of an idea, but it's a thing you can't actually get because maybe you're not from there, so you'll never really understand it. Or even if you're trying to do that thing, somewhere else, like, well, you don't have their grandma's ingredients, and so like it's elusive. And maybe at the end of the day, like, it's about the reverence you have for it and the love you have for it and the way that you interpret it through yourself. And so like I feel that same way about music, and like the kind of being the flame keeper of like, whether it's like people that were swing dancers. So like one of my like people that I just loved a lot was this lady Frida Angela Wyckoff. And so if you watch Don't Knock the Rock or Rock Around the Clock or any of those early rock and roll movies, she's the blonde chick dancing in them. And she was a Lindy Hopper in the swing era, but she kept dancing. And so a lot of those Lindy Hoppers ended up in those early rock and roll films. And so like she was like my second grandma. And so like I think about her when I do this stuff, and I think about somebody like Charlie Christian, my hero. Like for me, it's about kind of like showing what they did and kind of keeping that tradition alive, because a lot of times they get looked over. Like Charlie Christian is one of these figures where like he was on the cusp of where bebop was going, and he was kind of one of the people taking it there. But I think a lot of people only think of him as this kind of like missing link figure. And it's like, yeah, but he played all these awesome swing riffs and he like swung really hard. And you're like, yes, but he was almost a bebop, so that's why he's important. It's like, no, he was important on his own terms. And especially like, these great artists, like we got to take them on their own terms for what they are and value what they were and why they were doing it, not like because they were almost this. It's like, the New York Dolls aren't great because they're almost the Sex Pistols. They're great because they're the New York Dolls. Like,
very well said. Yeah. No, very well said, and that can apply to a lot of different groups from different eras or different. Yeah, man. I think that looking at it that way can apply to different periods of music. Oh, very well said. Very well put, my friend.
Thanks.
Yeah, I totally agree, dude. Just like a history. This is like a master class in music right now.
I try. Well, I definitely think there's so many parallels, and like I said, what some of the stuff that I listen to now is kind of more electronic, and like there are similarities in like house music or disco to like playing swing music, about like how you build up beats, how the different, like I think of a swing beat as just like thump, 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 but like it's not like that's the only thing happening. There's like hi-hats going tss, tss, and there's like layers, and so like certain things have different accents, like, and that's kind of the same thing as like boots and pants and boots and like a kind of a cliche.
Hey, I got a question. If you so when you plan, do you just depend on guys to know what they're doing? Like you depend on Wally to know how to play his instrument just right, or the hi-hat just to kick? Do you find the guys? Or do you have to sit down and go, hold on a second, could you do this?
Well, so you can only get somebody to do an impression for so long, and then it kind of wears thin. So like if you have to tell somebody what you're going for and they don't kind of get it, or they don't have that frame of reference, they can only hang. And like with drummers, it's like after about a set and a half, they start to like go ding a ding ding on the ride cymbal the whole time.
Yeah.
And so like, I mean, we've talked about Wally, who's, one of the great bassists and recording engineers of vintage music of the last 30 years. But like, we've also got Josh Colazzo here, and like, there's like 20 people on earth that like really understand how to play swing drums, and like Josh is without question the best, like by leaps and bounds, and he's the most humble dude and the sweetest guy. But like, not only does like he know everything from like Gene Krupa and Sonny Greer and Chick Webb and all that stuff, but like he knows all sorts of other stuff too, and has great ears. And there's something about when you're a great musician, you can just sort of apply it in any direction, whatever comes up. Yeah. And so, Josh has got the ears, but, Josh also started swing dancing around the same time I did, and was in that same kind of like vintage culture crew where it's like, gabardine shirts and white bucks all day, every day. And like really, kind of big into like living the life. And there's a certain reverence that you have to, that imbues in what, how you listen to the music. So like, Josh just knows these records and knows those influences cold. And we've gotten to do a couple of collaborations where they were almost like research projects. So like, I don't know if you've ever done a gig where you like just did a whole set of like one artist. Like, I don't know if you would ever think of doing that. Like,
I haven't done that.
Like
Not even a whole set of my own songs.
Well, we need to
Not
start.
even this artist.
Yeah. Well, but like one of the gigs that we do every year, and they have for about the last 6 or 7 years, is called Lindy Focus, and it's this big week-long event, swing dance event in Asheville, North Carolina, and they were like, we want a big band every single night, the whole thing, and it
Right.
you can't bring in 80 different people, so it's the same musicians every night. So how are you going to play 3 sets of big band music? So that's like 30 tunes for 5 nights in a row with like no repeats because it's the same audience every night.
Yeah.
And so what we figured out, the guy that was the musical director and the owner at the time, Michael Gamble, who's also a great swing band leader and bass player, we kind of collaborated. He had this idea like, well, what if we did a night of Benny Goodman and then a night of Count Basie and then a night of Artie Shaw and then a night of Duke Ellington.
Nice.
And so that kind of like tribute band mentality, like that's not like that's not the end goal per se.
Yeah.
But that one event is a really cool kind of research project. And so like we did that for 2 years where we had those big 4, which is very different than the big 4 of thrash metal. Very different. But and like the New Year's Eve, we'd be like, okay, well, let's like open up the pressure valve and do kitchen sink night where we do everything else that's not those 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After the first 2 years, there was no other artist that we could add where like the charts existed, because like with this stuff, like you can't have 5 saxophones playing all at once if they don't all know what note to be on every minute of every song. It just doesn't. So the community ended up crowdfunding like $27,000 to transcribe 34 Chick Webb charts. And like, Chick Webb was the house band at the Savoy Ballroom, kind of the birthplace of Lindy Hop. And like all of those, if you see any African-American dancers in a movie from the 30s or 40s, they're from the Savoy Ballroom. They're members of Whitey's Lindy Hoppers. And when they would rehearse to the Chick Webb band doing their band rehearsal. Like they didn't have like, a sound system to like play tunes to play to. So we did all this Chick Webb stuff. And so Josh spent like 6 months like immersed in like 30 Chick Webb songs. Not like 1, not 2, but like 30. And so that kind of like real deep dive. It's amazing because I remember just before we left for that gig, we were playing a gig, just one of our Campus 5 gigs, and we're playing whatever tunes, and he threw some solo break in, and I was like, oh, the Chick Webb, he's got some of the Chick Webb in him now. And when we did it, it was like a religious experience because you were really like feeling it and feeling that thing. And so I love how we've like get those influences. And then like Josh is a huge Ellington fan, and so like Sonny Greer is a big influence for Josh. Now, he can of course speak for himself, but but like him working through Ellington, I started to see all these like colors of Sonny Greer come out that were like kind of a richer thing, which is like kind of a new thread in his playing. And I was like, so cool. And so like on our newest Campus 5 CD that Tom was so kind to show off, the orange one, they're on I Would Do Anything For You, there's this final drum break, and it's like it's so like of that Chick Webb vibe, and it's just so cool of like how that influence kind of floated around for years and being absorbed and reabsorbed and kind of. So I love those deep dives, but at the end of the day, like the goal isn't to just do those. That's like the research project that then that's the homework you do once a year, and then the rest of the year you take those lessons forward. Yeah. So
does that mean it's time for another song?
Hold on a second. Yeah. Yes. We just got a call from our sponsors, the local DeSoto dealer. They want to hear another song.
You got it. Let's do a song. This is a shout out to my friend Paul Riding, and this is called Riding with Paul. The title's pretty on the nose, right? And this is another tune. Yeah, this is another tune that I wrote at home during the pandemic with like kind of not necessarily knowing we'd ever get to play it. And so we recorded this on the new Campus 5 record. And then when we did the Close Shave EP, that was sort of a, before the Campus 5 album came out, it was just this live stream thing to make up for an event that we couldn't do. So I rearranged it for this band. So again, like a little Easter egg, it's like a slightly different version of what you hear from the 2 different albums. So here's Riding with Paul.
Get rid of that thing.
I'm so awkward.
Oh yeah.
Swinging.
Come out together, yes sir.
I feel like when you have a band with like these guys, Craig's just like throwing down over here on the vibes, and Josh and Wally are just crushing.
Oh,
I just feel like it's a parlor trick. I like play the song and I'm like abracadabra, shazam, and like I didn't have to do anything. They just did all the awesomeness.
So where'd you find this vibe player at? It's not like you got vibe players all over the place. Do you have to like I don't know, send away to Russia for them? Where'd you get them?
Fisher Price, yeah. Hasbro was busy, so we called Fisher Price. No, I mean I don't remember where we met, but I got recommended. I mean, that's how when you need musicians. What's that? No. I mean, you got recommended by somebody vintagey. I mean, maybe it was. I think it might have been Josh that told me about you. That you probably played with somebody that. No, it was definitely Josh, and you were on the same gig, and he recommended you. And before that, I'd worked with DJ Bonebreak and the Bonebreak Syncopators for a couple of years. Talk about a terrifying experience trying to fill in for TK. I mean, geez. Because for anybody that doesn't know, I was in this really cool band led by DJ Bonebreak called the Bonebreak Syncopators, and DJ is of course the punk band, the drummer from the seminal LA punk band X, and he's also a great vibraphone player. And it was with Wally and Dave Stuckey and Jeremy Wakefield on steel, and originally TK Smith on guitar. And TK moved out to the high desert and just sort of wasn't really available for gigs, and so I would pitch hit for him on occasion, and then eventually they were like, just here, you're in the band now. And that was super cool. And so I got to work with DJ on Vibes, and so I was started to do stuff with Vibes, and I'd called DJ, and X got busy because they're X.
Yeah.
And I'm just so grateful Josh recommended Craig, because we've just basically been using him for everything ever since. And we do a lot of gigs where it's this band plus a piano and plus a clarinet, which is that exact Benny Goodman sextet lineup with Charlie Christian on electric guitar, Benny on clarinet, Lionel Hampton on vibraphone. And so we get to play together a lot in that. But one of the things that's hard with bringing in other jazz musicians is, even if you can find people that sort of get the style or can kind of like do it close enough, sometimes like that kind of fire, like there's a certain kind of like ability to kind of shred a little bit that like a lot of later jazz guys are like, oh no, I'm too cool for that, man. And like that's why I love like Craig. It's like, oh man, he brings the fire every time.
Yeah. And I don't mean to be pushy, but could we do another song at this point? Because I'm still fired up over that last one.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just amazing to have this whole group in here. It's like, if you got a car and you got a hot rod, you're going to turn it on, you're going to drive that thing full speed. So,
oh man.
Yeah.
Okay, so up next we'll do a tune. It's called Rose Room, and this particular arrangement, more or less, this is what Charlie Christian recorded in 1939 with Benny Goodman. And there's a great story where basically this music producer, John Hammond, who besides finding Charlie Christian also found Count Basie, Billie Holiday, Bruce Springsteen, Bob Dylan. So basically he found this guy, Charlie Christian, out in Oklahoma City. He heard him on the radio, and basically put him on a train to go out and meet Benny Goodman. And it was a big deal to like have Benny Goodman have a black guitar player, go out to meet his white band at that time. And basically like he auditioned for Benny, but Benny didn't even let him plug in, so it was weird. So not willing to let it stand, they like put him on stage without Benny noticing. And so Benny called a tune that he thought Charlie might not know, so he called Rose Room, thinking he wouldn't know it. And of course he did. And the story goes that he played like 27 choruses on his electric guitar, and it was just this amazing thing. But I don't know if that story is 100% true, but what I do know is that the love that Benny Goodman had for Charlie's playing and the admiration for it was really palpable whenever he'd introduce him on the radio. And Benny was a real aloof dude, so like he didn't like lavish praise on most people, but he would talk about Charlie like with just loving tone. So we're gonna play Rose Room, a la Charlie Christian and Benny Goodman. One, two, three.
Felt
Oh,
good.
thank you guys.
Could you remind
Yeah,
our
I'm really-
listeners at home once again what that song was?
Yeah, that tune was called Rose Room.
Man.
Oh, nice.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, Red Norvo, man. He came in with Benny after Lionel Hampton left. Red Norvo swings, man.
Yeah.
I had to go grab that when you guys went into that. I said, wait a minute, I have that back here. Because, I mean, of all the different formats, the 78s, LPs, 45, 10 inches are a beautiful thing. And this is, this is just a beautiful one. Rose Room on one side and Blue Room on the other side.
Oh, no way. That's awesome.
So I got a question about like Charlie Christian because, okay, what was he? It was 23 when he passed away, right?
Yeah.
But like, how did he get so good? And like when you listen to the old recordings, it seems like he's just riffing off the top of his head. Like, was he that good at that age? Like, what happened to that?
So there's a great website called soloflight.cc, and some of the information on it's not actually correct, but a lot of it's very, very good. And they actually have a calendar of his life from basically the minute that he got famous till his day, like written on a calendar format with squares for like days of the week. And I was just blown away by like how quickly stuff happened, because he basically got famous joining Benny Goodman in October of 1939. And he was basically ill with tuberculosis and not playing by the summer of 1941. So it was barely, Hendrix had almost a career twice as long.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there were some antecedents. There's a guy named Eddie Durham, who was a trombone player, arranger, and an early kind of advocate for amplified guitar. And he was out of Kansas City, and he was with the Jimmy Lunsford band and then with the Basie band, and was, really seminal arranger. But he also was one of the first guys who was trying to like make guitar as loud as a horn. And everything that he did kind of originally was like kind of sticking microphones on it. So it's not truly an electric guitar if you like look up the dictionary definition. Yeah. But he was a real mentor to Charlie Christian. And then, the thing about musicians back then is there was no canned music anywhere. If you were to go to a space that has music in it, it was being played by people. And so musicians were just working constantly and shedding constantly. And like, I think you guys probably work more than I do, but like, if you go to a weekender, it's not like you have 7 nights of gigs right after you get home from a weekender, these guys were just playing all day, every day, and then going to jam sessions at night. And the one thing I'll say about like making it up on the spot, like when I listen to the alternate takes of the live recordings, there's tons of stuff that he kind of pre-wrote out or pre-composed for like certain things. And like, I think there's a way that that's cool and can be done really cool when it's it's a good composition, but also like it's done with soul and feeling and not just kind of hacky. And like when I talk to swing dancers all the time, I'm like, well, have you ever seen like people just kind of wailing and making stuff up? Like, that's cool, but like, have you ever seen like really crazy amazing choreography where they're like dancing to like the absolute coolest they can? It's like, yeah, well, if the choreography sucks, like, yeah, it'll suck, but like there's a way in which when you're doing something that you've written, you can kind of compose it and shape it and really make it and polish it, and then you have to deliver it in a thoughtful, sincere, in the moment way.
Yeah.
But so Charlie had a lot of stuff that was like kind of pre-written or pre-composed, compared to like what we think of as a jazz musician. Not like every solo, but like there were little bits here and there. So some of his coolest stuff is like stuff he wrote ahead of time, but like there's still plenty of stuff that's like stream of consciousness amazing.
Yeah. So, hey, how many songs have we done so far? Have we done
4?
4. Okay, cool. Let me see.
Yeah, before we get into another one, I'd love to nerd out for a second on some of your guys' gear.
Yeah.
Wally, I was curious about your upright bass. What are you playing back there, man?
It's an American Standard bass. I think it's like 1941, as best as I can tell. It was a kind of run-of-the-mill bass at the time, but they sounds great for me.
Got strings though.
Yeah, and you gotta like set it up in the style that you had at the back then. Yeah, so it was like
nice, man.
Yeah.
High action.
The real key to it is you have the gut strings, which is what they had back then, and they didn't come up with the all metal strings until really like the late 50s, early 60s. Even then, like a lot of guys continue to play with the gut strings into the like mid 60s or so. and high action, so you can kind of thump on it a little harder, and that kind of gives it the real the sound, the pulse that you need for it.
Yeah, I love it, dude. I played some gut strings. I have a bass set up with all guts as well, and that's how I recorded all the upright for Abby Girl and the Real Deal, just to get that old school tone. So yeah, you're killing it, man. It sounds amazing. And Joathan, we were nerding out a little earlier. You said, I think you said 1937 called and wants your guitar back.
Yeah. So
that beautiful guitar.
Yeah. So this is a 1937 Gibson ES 150. So like, there were like guitars that were like experiments or like kind of like a novelty, but this was like the first kind of professional guitar model in 1936. And so this is what Charlie Christian played. He also played the one that was like slightly fancier, the 250, but like Charlie Christian played this, Slim Gaillard played this, Oscar Moore played these, Irving Ashby, John Collins, Mary Osborne. Oh God, I love Mary Osborne. If anybody's not hip to Mary Osborne, go Google that and you'll put a smile on your face. She's so amazing. But yeah, but this was kind of like the first like real guitar, electric guitar that wasn't like a laboratory experiment. And so this is what Charlie played. This is a 37. And then the amp, this is like kind of the matching amp you might get in the set. This was the kind of slightly bigger one, the EH 185. But it's funny, it's called an EH, and that stands for Electro Hawaiian, because at the time, the electric guitars they were selling were like 5-to-1, steel guitars, Hawaiian steel guitars.
Yeah.
And so like the amps were called Hawaiian amps, not ES is Spanish neck. But yeah, so this is like the same guitar that Charlie would have played on. But it reminds me of this thing, like, I think I saw him on YouTube, but there's a guy, Randy Richter. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Friends with Randy.
Yeah. So I saw this video, and it's so funny because, he's a real rockabilly cat and he's got his 50s, guild or whatever, and he's playing through his 50s Gibson amp, and he does this video of how to get that real rockabilly tone. And so like he does like a little playing example, and he's like, well, I just lied to you, this is what I was really playing when you heard that. And it was like a heavy metal guitar and a cheap little PV practice amp. And he was kind of making this point that like it's not the tools by themselves, like you have to know the vocabulary, you have to know that repertoire. And I totally agree with that, because you can't just buy one of these guitars and have it sound like that. But what I'll say is it just makes it so much easier to get that sound. And there's some certain timbres that you can really only get with the right thing. And so it's just so much easier when you've got the right stuff. But it definitely doesn't like do the job like right away, But I'll say on those drums, on the drums, like 100%, like I don't necessarily have to be old drums, but like the sizes are super important. And I don't know if Josh wants to say anything about that or about drums and stuff.
I was going to ask Josh about his drum set as well. Yeah.
I'm playing.
We don't hear enough from drummers, but
I know, right?
There's precious few of the great ones in all of our different genres of music that play these older styles. I mean, that's the toughest thing to find, I think. To find a great drummer, man. Yeah, let's. Yeah.
I think honestly, for me, the biggest thing to get the earlier sound is the cymbals.
You can use the overhead. You could stand up and use the overhead mic.
Overhead? Yes. All right. So I think for me, to get the earlier sound, it has more to do with the cymbals, because the cymbals were lighter weight. Like you can bend these; they're super lightweight. Same thing with the hi-hats, and it just brings the volume down, and you can sit with the band better. And then on top of that, having a 26-inch bass drum, like 24, 26-inch, like these are old Slingerlands, but for some reason I can play quieter on a bigger bass drum than I can with a 18 or a 20 or 22-inch bass drum. And I think that's because of the amount of air pressure that's coming off back to me that I can feel. So those are all just, kind of, for me, obviously, like Joathan said, like if you have the right gear, it just makes it so much easier. But yeah, I think it's more about the cymbals for playing an earlier style.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I was tripping out like when you came in and you had that big old bass drum, and I remembered like Pappy had the same thing in Bone Break Syncopators.
Yeah,
sure.
Just a couple of you're probably the only guys in LA that are playing with that.
Yeah,
those big old.
Another good friend of ours, Pappy Stuckey.
Yeah, man. So thanks for being
I think,
real.
I think everybody in this band also plays with Dave on occasion. So
Nice.
It's funny you mentioned that because he told me he wants to fight you.
oh no, he doesn't. I love that man. He does not.
That's a
wanna
running
fight
joke
me.
throughout.
I know.
every
I do
episode
know
of the
that.
show.
I do get the reference. I'm so sorry. I stumbled on the joke. Yeah. Yeah, no. Stucky's the best. He's good cat.
All right, guys. I think we're about ready to wrap it up with our last song.
Cool.
So, what do you got?
This is another Benny Goodman, Charlie Christian tune. I assume it's a joke on the movie Gone with the Wind, but it's a little blues, up-tempo blues called "Gone with What Wind."
Well, all right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, Joathan Stout's Close Shave Quartette. Take it away, boys.
like that.
At one point I had to shut my mic off because I know I was going to get let out a yell. I muted myself and I said, "Yeah."
That's okay. You could do it to Bob Wills style. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, it's weird. Like with me, it gives out that natural emotion. Like I feel like going, ah, like I don't know where it came from. You know, just listening to this music. It's funny.
Well, I think there's a lot of joy in that old music, and it's funny because like there's a certain kind of jazz that's like too cool for that that kind of emotion.
Yeah,
you know, like aesthetically, it's just not the right fit. Like, oh no, man, we're cool. It's like, no, man, like I want to have that like just like, you know, it's pre rock and roll for sure.
I know,
yeah.
and I always enjoyed that because
that's a good quote there. Let's not miss that though. It's well, Joathan knows what's up, man.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
Yeah. I just miss and that was always Wally's job, and I could always hear in the recordings Wally going, "Ha!"
Oh
or
my
something.
God.
I love that.
There are some of my favorite parts on our recordings are Wally yelping, or on a video, or like of a performance. It's yeah.
Yeah, he does it at the right spot. Like you know that one recording from Charlie Christian where in the back here, it's Charlie Christian. You know,
Yeah.
like when he's playing.
Yeah.
Like for some reason, I love that. There, Fat Boy Rag coming your way. Like I just love all that stuff.
Well, there's a certain like sincerity and like authenticity is not quite the right word, but it's like it's just so real, and visceral. And so like, if you're too cool for that, like, oh man, I don't know, that's a bummer.
Well, hey, I want to thank you guys for coming on out to West Coast Ramble. It's really been a treat. We've done all the rock and roll lately, but to have like full on swing combo, it's awesome.
I mean, it's an
great.
honor to be asked. And I was telling all y'all that I watched the TK episode, and it's just like this podcast is such a great resource. And whether it's any of those different branches of kind of the Americana stuff, like whether it's rock and roll or rockabilly or Western, or like it's that continuum, and like we're all sort of coming from the same shared roots. And so I'm really honored to be a part of it.
Oh man, and I just trip out because I get to see some of the best guitar players that I just love, and I can't believe that they're playing with us, man.
Where'd you put those best guitar players?
No, they're all on West Coast Ramble. If you look at the old episodes, yeah.
I just meant some of the people we've had on the show, but tonight just to see like an entire group of people who are just like the top of their game.
Yeah.
It just is. Even though I play music and I play with a lot of different in a lot of different settings, I'm still amazed by it. There's still the magic there when you hear people grooving together. It's like, even though when you've done it yourself, when it's good, you still like, wow, it's a beautiful thing. Thank you guys.
Oh, thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Well, any other parting words before we say goodbye to Joathan Stout and the Close Shave Quartette?
And it was a pleasure
Paul.
to hear you guys. You guys killed it. And just to tell all you Ramblers, go ahead and if you're feeling generous, you can tip at West Coast Ramble on our Venmo, and whatever the awkward TARP at PayPal is for Tom's PayPal. And make sure that Joathan Stout gets a little something for his time here. And we really appreciate you rocking for us, man.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Big Sandy, what do you got to say?
Well, I just want to once again thank them for being on the show. I had some other questions that I wanted to ask, but this is a good thing. I got lost in the music, and some of those just kind of drifted from my mind.
Me too.
But please support Joathan and all his different endeavors. It's all top notch, and buy his music. You can help immediately by all the donation information will be on the screen here. And we'll hopefully we can send them a few bucks, but buy their music.
Yeah,
listen to a group and pass it on to other people.
It's all on Bandcamp or iTunes or anything, all of that stuff. And but Bandcamp's always the best way. So
Okay.
All right.
Thank you guys.
Well, yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for coming out, and tip these guys handsomely, please. Let's keep this music going. Thank you for being on West Coast Ramble. Talk to you later, guys.
You keep me satisfied when I'm with you.